Good morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast on PennState.Rivals.com. I'm Richie Schnyderite, joined by co-host Dylan Callghan-Croley. Dylan, we are now a couple days out from Mike Yurcich's firing. Just overall thoughts now that we've had a couple days to process everything, because I know you already did one, but more thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think the idea of that Yurcich's job was going to be in trouble if things didn't get turned around was starting to kind of come into everybody's mind after that Ohio State game. The offense never looked great this season, even the games they scored 30, 40 points. There's nothing about this offense that, you can point to as a strength, really. There's nothing that stands out about this offense. It's a perfectly average offense. It's a Big Ten offense is what it is. It's the Iowa Hawkeyes with better athletes. But the offense never showed sign of improvement. The play calling this year throughout the season was pretty, I think,
dismal,
borderline terrible. James talked about it on Monday in his press conference when asked, did he ask Mike to, get easier throws for Drew to get Drew into a rhythm? And he said those things were asked for. And as clear as it was, they never happened. And I mean, Mike Yurcich failed not only Penn State's offense this year, he failed Drew throughout the season. I mean, I think a lot of Drew's struggles this year come back to the play calling, and overall, I'm not surprised. I think it just obviously wasn't going to work out with Yurcich this year, and with Penn State's window here with Drew, you have to make a move. You have to make a change. Because next year is potentially this was your best chance to get to a college football playoff, because this was the best defense you're going to have in probably for a long time, and you have the quarterback that everybody, whether it's us or one of the other two sides, has pegged as the guy, a guy who can be a top 5 NFL draft pick, a guy who can be that game changer at the quarterback position. And as me and Anthony said, he may have been better as a freshman than he is this season. And that comes back to Yurcich. And whether that he truly in his development was better last season than he is now remains to be seen. But because of Yurcich's play calling this year, Drew hasn't been able to showcase any of those skills, and it's a lost season for Penn State, because that offense, it never helped the defense in the two biggest games of the season. The defense, while not perfect against Ohio State and Michigan, gave Penn State's offense plenty of chances to win a game, and the offense couldn't make it happen by any means necessary. They could never get any consistency going. I mean, Michigan ran the ball 32 straight times to end Saturday's game, and it didn't matter. Michigan did not think that Penn State could move the ball at any consistent rate, and they were right. And that comes back to Yurcich. I mean, the game plans may be one thing, but the execution, whatever the game plan may have been, has been terrible, and that ultimately lies on Yurcich. Some people will call him a scapegoat, but I'm not. And while he may be a scapegoat to a degree, I also think that change is necessary. I think a new voice is needed, because 3 seasons as Penn State's OC, 2 of them have been pretty bad. One of them was decent last year. It felt like if Sean was a little bit better, Penn State may be a playoff team last year. But I mean, at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter when this season. What matters, there's more proof that it wasn't working here than it was.
Yeah, it is a tough one. The play calling, especially, like I just put up the clips recently of every Drew Allar throw from Michigan game, and it's just like some of the calls. It's just like it's rough. But I don't think not 80% of the blame probably goes to Yurcich, and I might be in the minority here, but I do think some of the blame goes on Allar. Like if you watch his throws, like he's like making weird throws. Like it's like there's an open like receiver up top or on the right side on the one goal line. It might have been a 2-point conversion actually. It looks like Dante Cephas was open on the right side. Then he throws it to, I think it was Theo Johnson, who was covered in the middle for the 2-point conversion. And it's like, dude, like it's right there. It seems like he almost zeroes in on his first read a little too long, but maybe that's just my opinion. You guys could disagree, agree, whatever, but I don't know.
I do think Drew's issues are not just Mike Yurcich coaching. I think Drew's issues are also partially Drew and his mentality out there. I think he's played scared. I think he's played scared. There's been throws, there's been opportunities. He's also just missing open guys. But at the same time, that goes back to coaching. I mean, at this point of the season, Drew shouldn't be missing these guys. Drew has over 20 games of experience at Penn State under his belt. He can't be missing these guys. And at the end of the day, that falls on Yurcich, but that also falls on James Franklin. I mean, at the end of the day, Penn State hasn't lost many of these games to Ohio State, Michigan by multiple scores. At the end of the day, when it's this many close losses, it comes back to coaching, and that's something that Penn State and James Franklin need to have a close, long look at going forward.
So now I want to pop this up. So we were talking, or we saw Brenneman offer his thoughts on the offensive coordinator search, and here's the names he threw up there. Just go one by one. Joe Moorhead, obviously. I think everyone wants Joe Moorhead. I think everyone raves about him because he was the OC when they say we're at the top.
That's definitely the name that everybody wants to. Everybody, all the fans want to come back because those offenses for Penn State were prolific. Those were some of the best offenses Penn State's ever had, and that was with a no offense to Trace, that was with a quarterback that didn't have a half the talent that Drew potentially has. Drew's ceiling is immense, but it would be intriguing to see how Joe's offense could work with a quarterback like Drew.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Like, I know he runs more of an RPO style, but Drew can run an RPO style. I know everyone's like, can he? And it's like, yes, he can. Like, relax. Number one. Number two, I've been told personally, and I've posted this on our message board, and I'll say it now since it's already been out there already. It sounds like he doesn't really have much interest in leaving Akron. Now, Akron's not paying a ton, but he gets to be the head coach of a G5 program. It is a little different. Like, and there's less, and you said it best to me, off the pod. There's just less stress. Like, if you go to Penn State, your expectations are, hey, win right now, or you might be out in a couple years.
Yeah, and who knows? You may be out of a job at Akron in a couple years, but also, I mean, it's also one of those things with Akron. Akron's such a tough place to win at, but and I would hate to be an AD at Akron because at some point when does the conveyor belt of coaches just stop? Like, you can't just keep going through coach after coach. When do you just, because the program hasn't shown any improvement since Terry Bowden's left. That was who was there, right? Terry? Was it Terry?
I don't even remember, to be honest. It's been so long.
It's gonna hurt me until I figure out.
Tom Arth.
But it was Terry. But either way, it's less stress. I mean, he's not winning there, but I'm sure the AD isn't breathing down his throat, being like, "Hey, you win now, or you're out." I think, but Akron, I think, knows who they are, and I think he needs time there because the Tom Arth era did not go well, and that Tom Arth era kind of ruined everything that Terry Bowden built. I mean, Terry Bowden took that program over after 2 1-11 seasons, built it into an 8-game and a 7-game winner, retired, and then Tom Arth took over and went 3 and 25, 23. Tom Arth completely destroyed that program, and now Joe needs to bring it back up, and it's a tough one. But I think, I think it's less stressful, and I think if he wants to be a head coach, who wants to have that ability, then Akron's a good spot for him, and it keeps him close to home. I mean, and Penn State would too, because he wanted to be closer to home compared to Oregon, but definitely less stress.
Yeah, and on top of it, like I know it's year 2 with this program for him, so he is still building it. But there's two ways to look at it. Number one, like if he is such a good offensive mind, why the hell are they 132 out of 133 programs in points per game?
Right.
But like you said, it was a dumpster fire under Arth, so it is hard to rebuild, and it's probably going to take you 3 to 4 years to rebuild it, at least to respectability. We're not even talking like bowl game; we're just talking about like competitive.
Yeah, and it's tough place to win, and if it's a tough place to win, it's a tough place to recruit, which probably is a big reason for that 15.4 points per game this year. I mean, if you don't have the quarterbacks to make it happen, you just don't have the quarterbacks that can do it. I mean, you look at their numbers, the completion percentages are fine, but 4 touchdowns, 8 interceptions for the one quarterback, 3 and 3 for the other. And then there's Taj Bullock, who that was a name I forgot.
Yeah, New Jersey guy. But yeah, looking at their schedule this year, like they were competitive in a couple games though. They took Temple down to the wire. They actually were beating the shit out of Temple in the first half.
They almost beat Indiana.
Yeah, in what was it, triple overtime or double overtime versus Indiana? Buffalo was only a 3-point game, 7-point game versus Central Michigan. They just beat Kent State, who everyone raves about Sean Lewis's time there, and they still have Sean Lewis's players.
Yeah.
Mind you, they didn't score a single point this week, but against Miami, Ohio. But I mean, he is building it, and plus, like you said, it's less stress. And everything I've been told, it's like he really doesn't want to give up that head coaching spot because you get to literally do everything of the program. Versus you come to Penn State, it's stressful. Like
Now, if he wants to get back to the Power 5 level as a head coach, I think the quicker route is going the OC route. And going from there.
Pending you get, I mean, hey, if you get 8 wins next year at Akron, you might get a head coaching spot. Like, boom.
Sure, yeah.
Very, very unlikely. But, going back to the next name on this list from Brenneman, it was Joe Brady, who might have just got scratched off this list because the Buffalo Bills fired OC Ken Dorsey and just named Joe Brady interim OC. So, that might just be...
It's always tough with NFL guys too because our NFL guys really going to leave mid-season to
that too. Yeah.
And Penn State, I think, probably wants this hire to be done by the early sign-up period. I didn't see Joe Brady leaving the Bills in the middle of a playoff push in December, and Penn State can't wait for him. Bills may not make the playoffs, but the Bills.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you watch them on Monday. There's a shot.
Penn State can't really wait for him, till January to come around. So, I think this scratches him off the list. But this will be an interesting next couple rest of the season to watch for Joe Brady because I know this is how Anthony felt, and this is how I feel to a degree. Like, is Joe Brady actually this elite offensive mind that we all think he is? Or was he a product of having, one, a great OC at LSU, but also having one of the most talented offenses, if not the most talented offense of all time?
Yeah.
I mean, he had that OC job in Carolina under Matt Rule, and I know the talent wasn't great there, but he never really blew me away with his play calling and, feel either. So.
So that's a tough one, but it seems like he's off the list. Next on the list is an intriguing one. It's Sean Lewis, who loves to pass the ball a ton. Is that out of necessity, maybe at Kent State, because that's just what action football is, and then go to Colorado, does the same thing, and that, again, Pac-12, it's just pass.
Yeah.
So how good of an OC is he? Dion just demoted him for Pat Shurmur, who I'm pretty familiar with as a Giants fan. Stupid move. I'll just say it.
I mean, and Sean Lewis had, that Colorado offensive line clicking, and the only reason they struggled is because their offensive line may be worse than half the FCS. It's like
it's very bizarre.
Dion's done a really good job at Colorado, but Dion is, I think, clearly also a little bit in over his head right now. And but I mean, Sean Lewis got paid $2 million to become the OC at Colorado. I don't think he's going to be there after this season. He makes a lot of sense. Now, like a lot of OCs, if these hires go right, they're not going to be around long. And Lewis is a guy who wants to become a Power 5 head coach. Penn State, in a region that he's familiar with, he's spent most of his career on the East Coast / the Midwest. Penn State's familiar with him from being local. I mean, Sean Lewis makes a lot of sense. And I think he would be a Grand Slam hire for Penn State.
Yeah. And I mean, he's the same guy that made, what do you call it? Dante Cephas look as good as he did. So,
and I mean, that's everything I forgot to talk with Yurcich and wide receivers, which I think was his biggest failure, is that Penn State, as an offense coordinator, quickly, your job, is to design plays to get guys open. There was never any creativity in the offense or in the play con of getting the wide receivers open. We saw some against Maryland with rub routes and such, but then in the two biggest games of the season, it didn't matter. Sean Lewis brings that creativity. He brings really great play designs, and I think he, like I said, he would be a Grand Slam home run hire for Penn State.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm looking at the rest of this list. Cliff Kingsbury is interesting. Garrett Riley, Kirby Moore, Phil Longo's best friends with Luke Fickell, so I don't see him leaving either. But do any of those four kind of really make sense? I mean, they make sense, I guess, from the standpoint that they're good OCs or they've been good OCs in the past. But do you think any of those four are realistic?
For one reason or not, let me just go through, I guess, each quickly.
Yeah, if you want to go through it quickly.
Cliff would be obviously a home run hire. Would it be a fit? I don't know. But, I mean, if you want a great offensive mind, Penn State would be scoring 40 points, no doubt in my mind, next year with Cliff Kingsbury. And they'd be doing it competitively and not doing it, it would be a fun offense to watch. But he has a kind of a stress-free job in California. He's getting paid a ton of money by the Arizona Cardinals to not coach, be a head coach. If Lincoln Riley leaves USC this year, which I'm not sure is a possibility, but I know people have been talking about more.
It could happen.
That then it becomes a little interesting what happens to Cliff. He kind of makes sense maybe as a potential hire for USC, but at the same time, who knows? Cliff would be a home run hire, I think, but I don't think it happens. Garrett Riley, not sure I see him leaving Clemson after this year. Not sure how I feel about him. Honestly, with TCU, he's great. This year's been solid with Clemson, but I'm not sure Clemson lets him leave. Kirby Moore is very, very interesting. I think he has a great chance to be a very good OC for a long time and a great head coach, but he's only been an OC for 2 years. He's never coached east of the Mississippi. That one I think is a tough hire to make because of the background history where he's recruited and all that. And then Phil Longo kind of said it would be interesting, but I don't know if he leaves Luke Fickell after 1 year. And that offensive mass, I know they dealt with injuries, but even with Tanner Mordecai, that offense wasn't blowing me away.
Yeah, so I ended up actually just texting back and forth with a couple of New Jersey guys because Phil Longo is a Jersey guy. I'm a Jersey guy. We all talk to each other, basically.
Sure.
It's just how it works. We're all Italian. We all talk to each other, the basics. So basically what I was told is Phil Longo is best friends with Luke Fickell. He's been trying to get together with Fickell somewhere at the Power 5 level for a couple years now, hence why he left North Carolina for Wisconsin. Now, from what I was told is Longo is not leaving unless it's for a Power 5 head coaching job, which makes a ton of sense. He's already proven that he's a great OC. He's getting close because I know he was very close to that Rutgers gig before Schiano ended up getting it again. Yeah. But and I know there is some interest, I was told, and if this one opens up, which it might, Syracuse.
That would be an interesting landing spot for him, I think, and that would be very good. And I do think he's a good offensive mind, but this year in Madison has not gone well for Fickell or Longo, to say the least.
No, I mean preseason projections had them winning the Big Ten West, and they're probably not. Although that side of the conference, I don't even know what the hell I was on.
I mean, it's 4, 5, and 5 teams.
Yeah, it's rough sledding over there. Is there any name that we didn't mention that would kind of stand out to you?
Brendan Marion at UNLV is one that just a offense coordinator that's grown on me. I mean, he's been around the coaching circuit for a while now, still only in his 30s, but it feels like he's been around forever. From Pennsylvania, has coached, at William & Mary, which is, in Virginia, coached at Pittsburgh. Penn State known of him. Penn State's, I think had interviews with him in the past. Has an innovative offense, the go-go offense, which has been putting up big numbers in UNLV, 36.5 points per game, 423 yards per game. Him and Larry Odom have turned UNLV around very quickly. I mean, UNLV this year is 8-2.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry, I say
it's
Larry, Barry Odom, but
yeah, no, it's interesting too because he was a name that we actually mentioned all offseason for the wide receiver spot, right?
Yeah. He's been really impressive as an OC so far, and I do wonder if how far away is he from a head coaching job? Does any G5 school look at him at this offseason?
Yeah.
Which
I always
go ahead.
Go on. No, my fault. Go on.
No, I was thinking back to Missouri's offense coordinator who Adam had on his previous list, which Kirby Moore, talking about a potential head coach. It would be quick, but Boise State just opened up their head coaching job, firing Andy Avalos. Kirby Moore, like his brother Kellen Moore, is a former Boise State standout. So I wonder if Kirby potentially gets a look to lead his former program.
That'd be interesting. I didn't even think about that. That'd be a real interesting one because I highly doubt Kellen Moore is going to leave the NFL OC gig for that of all things.
Beyond that, it's tough because on my early offense coordinator hot board, I had Ryan Grubb from Washington. That's somebody who probably gets a head coaching job this offseason. I mean, I've seen his name pop up for San Diego State, which could make sense. Andy Ludwig at Utah. He's not going to leave there without, Kyle Whittingham putting up a fight, but he's been around the country throughout his whole career. But this is his second stint with Utah now. But he's had success everywhere. He's creative. He's been able to do a wad with less at Utah. So I think he's intriguing. Andy Koltanicki at Kansas. He's always
QB
been
guru.
QB guru for sure. I mean, he's putting up huge numbers with a backup quarterback this year. But he's always been with Lance Leipold since 2013. He served as his OC at Wisconsin Whitewater, at Buffalo, and now at Kansas. Does he stick with that loyalty, especially with Leipold potentially getting another job this year? Or
that's true. Yeah.
I mean, Koltanicki's gonna have the opportunity to become a head coach sooner than later, whether that's with Kansas or with another program.
I didn't even think about that because if Leipold leaves, they might just say, "Hey, here, take it."
Tyler Bowen down at Virginia Tech. I think Tyler is on his way to becoming a good OC. He's shown improvement. I mean, when they went from 19 points last year to 26 points this year, that's a pretty big improvement over 1 year. He seems to be more comfortable in that role this year, but I'm not sure he's at that level just yet for Penn State.
Completely agree.
And this is why I think Jaywan Sire, Ty Howell probably don't ever get a job. Is this feels like, I don't want to say a make or break hire for James Franklin, but if this offensive coordinator hire does not go right, I think Franklin could find himself in a very tough situation in a couple years. This has to be a coordinator hire that he absolutely gets right. And that's why I think there's a lot on the table here. I think Penn State's going to be willing to throw around some big money. Which way? Maybe they do go after a guy like Cliff Kingsbury and throw a ton of money at him. They went after Manny Diaz last year.
True. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
I mean, and if you want to keep throwing out, names of like people getting fired, I don't think it's happening. But just in the aspect of James knew last year they couldn't afford a drop off at defense with what they had coming back. They needed 2 years ago at defense, they needed a big hire there. He went with Manny, who he called Manny a day after Manny got fired. There's rumors that there's a certain head coach out of the Pac-12 who's about to get fired, who has been known to be quite the offensive mind over his career. In Chip Kelly. I don't think Chip Kelly is going to become the offensive coordinator at Penn State. But my point is I think this is a big enough hire for Penn State and James Franklin that literally anything is on the table. but I will also say it's not going to matter unless I think James has to go to an offense coordinator who has his own system. I don't think James can bring an offense coordinator in that has, like with Nittany, the question is he running his offense or is he running Lance Leipold's offense?
That's a great question because it goes back to the Yurcich thing. Like Yurcich was great at Oklahoma State. Everyone raves about him, and it was the same thing for Rutgers hired offensive coordinator Sean Gleason from Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
it's not their offenses; it's Mike Gundy's offense. They just are a figurehead, and maybe they have a little bit of like input, but they might have a lot of input. But it's still their offense at the end of the day.
And now he's done such a good job the last few years with Callghan-Croley at Washington and Fresno State. But Ryan Grubb, you can ask the same thing. Is he going to have the same success without Callghan-Croley? Now, I think he's just going to carry that Callghan-Croley offense to wherever he goes. But I think James needs to make a hire at the offense coordinator position in which he can trust the new OC coming in to bring in their own offense. It won't be a drastic change at offense, but handle their own offense and take a hands-off approach. Because at the end of the day, what is the common denominator when you're going on to your sixth offense coordinator in 11 years? It's the head coach. And the one that really worked more than any other was a guy who kind of brought a whole new system in. Not a whole new system, but quite a bit of different system in Joe Moorhead. Other than that, Penn State's offense has been always good, but never great or exciting. Joe Moorhead, it was great and exciting. But you look at the John Donovan eras, you look at the Ricky Ronnie years, Kirk Ciarrocca, and now Mike Yurcich. I mean, Kirk Ciarrocca isn't going to blow anybody away with his offense, but his offense is a pretty solid offense. We've seen that in multiple stops now. But I think James Franklin has to hire somebody where he can take a hands-off approach, trust somebody to run their offense, and run it the way that will best suit Penn State's talent, which I don't think Mike Yurcich did a very good job of this year.
So now I'm going to spitball two names at you. I'm going to start with the first one, get your reaction, and I'll throw the second one out. Gerard Parker.
Definitely familiarity there.
Big win, big steal.
Yeah, that would be somebody who's had, he's had success with Notre Dame. I don't think it would be a hire that gets people excited. That's for sure. Would Franklin lean that way? That's a good question. I mean, their offense this year has been good, not. It's been good, not great.
Yeah.
I would lean towards no, just because there are 3 losses this year. The offense has been pretty, quiet, and outside of against, a bad USC team, bad Pittsburgh team, but against ranked opponents this year, they've scored 14 for 21, 20, and 23 points. I think he has a chance to be good, but I'm not sure he's Penn State ready just yet.
Okay. Second name I'm going to throw at you, and this might be a little bit of a reach on my part. Ricky Rain, for the sole fact that he's in year 3. They're 4-6. It's not looking too hot there. Maybe he just gets out of Dodge.
I get it, but yeah, I don't think I see that one happen. Just because I think Penn State's been there, done that with Ricky Ronnie. The offense was good, but never elite. Like it was with under Joe Moorhead. Definitely had its moments, but like I said, I think Penn State has almost an open checkbook here. I think you dream big, aim big, and if you're asking me who that name is for me, that's realistic. I think that it's Sean Lewis.
Okay,
I think you open the checkbook, and I think you open the checkbook and just write Sean Lewis a blank check, even if it's only for 2-3 years. Write him a blank check. Allow him to come in, be the OC, and he has a chance. I think he's proven what he can do at multiple schools now, in multiple conferences, and I think he would be the guy to target.
Yeah, of course. Now, before we sign off, I have one last question for you. It's a big one.
Yeah.
Is James Franklin? I know a lot of people have asked this. Is James Franklin the right guy for this job? Yes or no? Just give me a yes or no first, and then we'll get into the details.
Oh, is James Franklin the right guy for the job? Man, that's a tough one. Oh man, I guess I lean towards yes, but time is running out.
Mm-hmm. That's
Like,
fair.
I think James Franklin is a coach who can win a national championship,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he's a coach that needs to have a lot going right for him, and one of those things is to have elite coordinators around him. You look at Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney's best years came when he had elite coordinators. Since he's lost his elite coordinators, Clemson's taken steps back.
Yeah.
Because Dabo is not a great X's and O's head coach. Dabo is not a great game day head coach. Dabo won his national championships because he had great coordinators around him.
Mm-hmm.
James Franklin, not necessarily the best X's and O's head coach, not the best game day head coach. We've seen that. There's enough data points that show that. He's a damn good recruiter, that's for sure. And I think he is a CEO head coach.
Which is fine.
Exactly. Because there's also another CEO head coach in the SEC named Kirby Smart.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby Smart was a very good defense coordinator, don't get me wrong, but also he wasn't exactly running his defense at Alabama. He was running Nick Saban's defense. Mm-hmm. He's a great defensive mind, don't get me wrong. But I don't get the sense that he's this over-the-top, game day head coach either. But he has damn good coordinators around him that make the job a lot easier for him. Again, I think Kirby Smart is a really good head coach. I think he's a great head coach. He's a better head coach than Dabo Swinney. But both of those are CEO head coaches, and they've done it very well, and they've had 4 national championships to prove for it. James Franklin is very much a CEO head coach. He recruits better than almost all but maybe a handful of coaches in the country. And he's made some really good hires. The one hire he cannot get right consistently right now is the offensive coordinator hire, also the wide receivers hire. Every other hire,
I was going to say, yeah, that one's been pretty bad.
Every other hire you could point to and say he's done a really good job. That defensive staff is full of future defensive coordinators and head coaches. The offensive staff, Ty Howell will be an OC one day. Jaywan Sider is going to be a head coach one day. Phil Traveline got a lot of crap in his first few years, but the offensive line has been great this season for Penn State for the most part. He's got a lot of hires right, but he hasn't got the OC hire right, and he hasn't got the wide receiver hire right. And he's on his sixth. Hires. He's on his 6th OC now, and he's had 5 wide receiver coaches in 7 years. Those are 2 that he hasn't got right. That comes down to him. And that's why I think this offense coordinator hire for James is a big one. This is one, if this one doesn't work out, then I think things start getting interesting for Penn State James Franklin. Also, it's tough because if you ever do fire a head coach who's, say Penn State continues to be a 9-3, 10-2 win team, if you fire a coach that's 10-2, that's going to turn off quite a bit of people. Because let's be honest, he's done it in the toughest division in college football with Michigan and Ohio State. He also had Michigan State there for a while. He's done it in the toughest division in college football. Now he has his faults. Like I said, when you have this many close losses to these types of teams, it comes down to coaching. And his coaching on Saturday against Michigan was pretty bad. The decision to go for it on 4th down is one thing, but to go for 2 after that touchdown, if you missed the 2-point conversion, it ends the game. There's no defense for that. You go for the extra point to extend at least the hope that you have to potentially get the game time score. That didn't happen. So I think James Franklin has to do a lot of soul searching this offseason with that, but he needs to get this OC hire right, because if this doesn't get right, then he's in an interesting spot. I will also say, if you're going to fire James Franklin, you need to have Pat Kraft needs to have a guy he knows is going to be his guy. People point to Mark Richt in Georgia and Kirby Smart. When Richt was fired at Georgia, it was immediately clear that Kirby Smart was going to be the target for Georgia. They had their guy, they identified him, they went after him, and he became the head coach, and look where they are now.
True.
They had that guy. But it's not like they'd fired Mark Richt because they just wanted change. They wanted change, but they knew who they wanted to take over the program. If you don't do that and you just go out there blindly, that's how you end up in a situation like Texas A&M, where you're now paying coaches out, paying coaches $70 million to not coach, and now you're going to have to pay.
Oh, I think I lost you for a sec.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm back. You're paying coaches to not coach, and now you're going to have to pay a lot of money for another coach to come coach. And there's I don't know how many people know of the Twitter account John Tweets Sports, but he made a good point yesterday on Twitter and said a lot of college administrators and fan bases are looking for their Kirby Smart when in reality they need to find their Mark Richt. Kirby's the best coach in college football, which I would probably agree with, but the brand equity that was there when he showed up, got to build that first. That's a really good point. Now, I think James Franklin's done a really good job of building that brand equity for Penn State. Mm-hmm. Now, with this OC hire over the next 2-3 years, and if maybe this OC works out, they need a new one next year. The next 2-3 years of offense and the OCs, I think, is what will make or break James Franklin. The buyout is going to drop over that time period, and over that time period, there's going to be more data points if Penn State can get over the hump or not. As I said on the Locked On NittanyLions podcast on Saturday night, me and Zach were in the elevator with a couple of writers, including a rather national, prominent writer, and that writer said to everybody, or to one writer in particular, there's enough data of points now for James Franklin in his Penn State tenure. Pat Kraft has to decide what he wants Penn State football to be under his leadership. And that's what I think Pat Kraft will ultimately decide over the next 2-3 years is what he wants Penn State football to be, if he's happy with the direction of the program under James Franklin, and if he thinks Franklin has done a good job of building that equity to where it needs to be, and then if he doesn't think it's time for the job, identifying who he thinks could be the guy to finish the job off. That's where Penn State football is right now. James Franklin, I think, has another 2, 3, maybe 4 years to show what he can do, to show that he can get these offense coordinator hires right. And if he does, Penn State, he'll be the Penn State head coach for a very long time. If he doesn't, and they struggle like they have been, that's when things start getting interesting. I think that's when we can start talking about job security for James Franklin. But right now, James Franklin has a lot of job security.
I would say the biggest reason, you kind of touched on it, that he's safe, is that they're letting him hire another offensive coordinator. Like Kraft isn't going to say, "Hey, go find somebody," and then I'm going to fire you in December or January, whatever it is, post bowl game. Yeah. So like anyone that thinks that he's getting let go this offseason, I'm sorry to tell you, you're just wrong. Like it's not happening.
And they just don't have the money. I mean, there's very few schools like Texas A&M.
The boosters could come out a little bit,
sure,
but they always come out of the money's. It's like Penn State's weird with the situation. It seems like where the money's never there until it's actually needed. Once it's needed, it's like, all right, all this money just comes out of the woodwork, and it's like, oh yeah, like what we want to do, coach. Yeah. Like, and it's like, bro, here's your $10 million, take it. I don't care. Like,
but with the
drives me nuts.
But with the money we're talking about, which what is like $73 million right now, 63, somewhere in that range, well over $60 million. That's still a lot of money to ask for right now. And yeah, I mean, it's such a tough place for Penn State to be. Marty said on the podcast a lot, Penn State is in the upper echelon of college football. Let's not get that wrong. Penn State is about to go 10-2 again, probably make a, New Year's Six bowl game and maybe win another New Year's Six bowl game. I mean, they're about to win
basically every New Year's Six bowl.
Exactly. They've won a Fiesta under James Franklin, a Cotton Bowl, a Rose Bowl. There's a lot of programs that would die to be in the spot that Penn State is in.
No, yeah, 100%.
But you also, I mean, at some point or another, you have to decide when are you done being content with where you are. If Pat Kraft doesn't see that there is much more room that James Franklin can take Penn State, then he starts thinking about that. But I think the way Penn State has been recruiting recently, because I think the recruiting has been getting only better and better. NIL is getting better and better. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to still believe that James Franklin can get it done. I mean, I think him firing Mike Yurcich now, being willing to make that decision to fire him, is also a sign that James is not content with what the program is. He knows he missed a big opportunity this year.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows he can't let next year slip. So we'll see what he ultimately does. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like we said with Akron and head coaches. You can only go through so many coaches. Penn State can only go through so many offensive coordinators under James Franklin. At what point does Pat Kraft say enough is enough? Obviously, that's not that. Time's not now. And I don't think it's going to be next year because I think the OC there is going to probably get a year or two. He's going to get 2 years at least. But
yeah,
it's definitely starting to get to that point where James has to continue to show there's growth to be made for the program. And it starts with this hire, and that's why Penn State, I think, has to go big or go home.
Yeah. And this is kind of why I feel like a lot of people are like, screw you, Sandy. You kind of put us in quite the bind. It's a lot of money. I'm looking at this extension now. It's a lot of money. Terminate them following this season, it's $6 million. The nice thing is it does drop to $2 million buyout next year following the 2024 season.
Wait, is that?
That's
what
it says in termination clause.
Because I know there was a termination clause if those were. That may be for what it would be if he got poached.
You're right. Yeah, if he got poached by an NFL or college, you're right. So if you probably have to pay the full amount then, right? If he
I think if he gets fired, it's the money basically for each year remaining.
Yeah, it's a lot of fucking dollar signs.
Yeah.
It's almost like
10 years, $70 million, a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like Jimbo Fisher's thing. I don't know if you saw his contract termination fee was like, they're like, hey, Jimbo Fisher's first ever job was Samford's offensive coordinator, $20K. Jimbo Fisher for the next week or every week for the next like year is like $26K a week or next couple years. It's like, and they owe like $7 million by like 2024. They owe like $6 million by 2025. And it's like, it's insane. But yeah, it is a big question mark, and you got to start considering it. Is he the guy or not?
I would never blame fans for wanting more, Penn State take that next step. At this point, it's
reasonable.
It's shut up or put up time for Penn State football. Yeah. You gotta make that step. You didn't get into the college football playoff when it was a 14 playoff. That was your major goal. But there would be no greater benefactor to the expanded college football playoffs than James Franklin. If James Franklin can get Penn State to the playoffs, great. But can they win a game in the playoffs? That would be. I mean, for a guy who struggled against top 10 teams, I mean, it's shut up or put up time.
Yeah, that's the next question. You get there, and you'll probably get there next year, to be honest, because it does go to 12, and you have a good shot of getting there. And if you don't get there, then we're like, all hell might break loose. But if you do get there, it's if you lose in round one, is it just like, hey, this is it again? It's the same shit over again. Like I don't know what you do. It's a tough one, and I'm glad I'm not Pat Kraft, so I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, Pat Kraft is not in I don't know how many people want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll finish with saying this. I think right now James Franklin is the guy for Penn State. And I think he could get the program to where it wants to be, but he has to get out of his own way a little bit, I think. And part of that comes with making good coaching hires. And I think they have something in Marcus Higgins, but this OC hire has to be a home run. It has to be a home run. There's no way around it.
Yeah. All right, we've went pretty long on this one.
That's all right.
I think that's really all we got. We're just kind of waiting on offense coordinator.
Yeah,
Big week.
yeah, and be sure to stay tuned over at Have Valley Insider. You can get a free 30 days with the code HVI30. Stay tuned on the offense coordinator search. But also, we are 5 weeks until the early sign-in period. There's still some room in the 2024 recruiting class. So, stay tuned on that as well. And the 2025 class, talked about it just last episode, the ball is rolling for Penn State. So we'll see if they continue that ball. That ball continues to roll. Go to Have Valley Insider, sign up for a free 30-day trial. Check us out, HVI30. And that's all I got.
All right. No, I shouldn't say big game. Game against Rutgers this week. 20.5-point favorites, I believe it is. It might have changed since.
I may lean towards Rutgers in this one to cover.
Yeah, we could talk more about that later this week. They have a good defense. Their offense is they didn't score a point on Iowa.
Yeah, it's pretty abysmal.
They didn't even get past the 40 on Iowa. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. It's Penn State really doesn't have much to play for beyond pride at this point. So I just wonder how flat they come out this week. But we'll see.
I wonder what the crowd looks like too, because you're going from the most ever in Happy Valley?
Yeah,
the second most.
Three of the top 5 attended games this year ever at Beaver Stadium. And unfortunately for Penn State, it's going to come in a season that is ultimately considered a disappointment.
Yeah, and if you recall the Indiana game where the students barely showed up, I could see that being very similar to this weekend.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance it's a pretty ugly crowd showing.
Yeah,
the announced attendance may be 100-some thousand, but
it's always whatever.
I don't expect it to be. I'm not sure when students go home for Thanksgiving break, but
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, they can go home this weekend. I can see it being a pretty empty crowd.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But you know what? I'm in all honesty, and I'm going to say it. This might help Drew Allar because for some reason the man can't play in big environments. So
the lights have been a little bit bright so far, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. For me and Dylan, that's another edition of the Happy Valley. HappyValleyInsider.com/Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.